They thought college was too soon for lifelong love, episode 2. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates. We had 3.5 years before our meeting. I used that time well. I had relationships, flings, crushes. With a few of those men, I wondered, is he the one? For various reasons, the answer was never yes. Might it have been yes if Howard and I didn't have our date planned? Maybe, maybe not. In any case, most of my interactions with men, whether short or long-lasting, only strengthened my sense that Howard probably was the one and that I had been prudent to arrange our second chance. A part of our agreement that didn't make it onto the dollar bill was that we would tell no one, a rule I promptly forgot. At some point, I told my best friend. She thought the plan was creative, but felt bad for the guy I was seeing at the time. I also told my mother, which was a mistake. At the 5-year mark, I was living in Minneapolis. I was in a relationship that had been staggering along for months. As for Howard and me, we hadn't spoken or communicated at all for a couple of years. I vaguely knew of his whereabouts from mutual friends, but this was before cell phones, the internet and email, a bygone era where you could actually lose touch with people and not know how to contact them even if you wanted to. That's what had happened with us. Nevertheless, a few days before that first Sunday in May, I flew home to the Jersey suburbs for a visit with my mother, planning to head into the city for the weekend. My sister had an apartment on the Upper West Side, and it would be nothing unusual for me to stay with her because I always did when I visited. But my mother kept suggesting an alternative plan, arguing that it would be better to go into New York when my sister wasn't working. As a restaurant employee, she was busiest on weekends. No, I said. I have to go in this weekend. I'm meeting Howard on Sunday. That stopped her. I didn't know you two were still in touch. We haven't been, I said. But we agreed to meet on the first Sunday in May this year, so I have to be in the city. When did you make this agreement? 5 years ago, I said. Oh my God. 5 years ago? Are you out of your mind? Doesn't he live in California? He's not going to fly all the way to New York for this. Yes, he will. I'm sure he'll be there. While I was on the train into Manhattan, my mother called my sister and urged her to keep me from following through, fearing I'd be heartbroken when Howard didn't show. When I arrived, my sister said, "You're trying to live your life like a movie. Real life doesn't work like that. He's not even going to remember, much less travel 3,000 miles." She had to work that afternoon and evening, so I was, quite happily, on my own for the walk from the Upper West Side to Midtown. A few minutes before 4 p.m., I found myself standing across the street from the library, scanning the small crowd in front, when suddenly I saw Howard heading toward the library steps. We saw each other, smiled and waved. I crossed the street and we hugged in front of the Lion, fortitude, I learned later, then sat down on the steps and started talking. Our conversation lasted 2 days. Then Howard caught a plane back to California. It wasn't immediately happily ever after for us. I had to extricate myself from the relationship with the other guy. Howard and I also had to figure out how we were going to live in the same city. That fall, I moved to the Bay Area for a couple of months on a work assignment. A few months later, he moved to Minneapolis, where we stayed for 2 years before moving to New York. And once we were back east, we married. I still resisted calling our story romantic. Friends who had heard the story tended to exaggerate the details, saying things like, "And you didn't see each other for 10 years? Actually, it was a 5-year plan, and it was only 3 years that we were fully out of touch. Or they'll say, "And you always knew, advertisement." No, that was the whole point of the agreement. We didn't always know. Even after the meeting, it took a while for us to move in together. When we moved to New York, we agreed we would have to see how things worked out with jobs before making any promises. What is true is how the story has helped sustain our relationship through times of trouble. I would have hated to end the story with, "Unfortunately, it didn't work out." With a story like that, of course, we had to stay together. A romantic past, we've discovered, can help keep you belted in place until you find equilibrium. Still, I insisted the story was about foresight and prudence, not romance. I only shared the story with people who wouldn't think I was trying to live my life like a movie, who would know the story was about being smart in love, not starry-eyed. For years, I ended the story with, "I thought I was just being practical and giving us a second chance." It turned out to be a good plan. Well, the plan may have been practical, a friend said recently. But the fact that you both showed up, there's the romance. He was right. It was our complete faith in the other person, despite others' cautions, that defined the romance. We showed up for each other. We now have been married for 35 years. Howard still shows up for me, and I show up for him. The torn dollar bill is in a frame on his dresser. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates.